You're listening to episode 95 of the Product Boss podcast. In this episode, we chat with Sue Monhait of Biz Unwrapped. Sue helps gifters, bakers, crafters, and makers pursue their dreams. In this episode, we chat about the business side of making. So this really is the tip of the iceberg on this topic, and the reason why I wanted to jump in here and ask you, would you like to hear more episodes like this one from myself and Jacqueline for makers? So let us know. You can DM us on Instagram. We are at The Product Boss over there. Or better yet, let us know your favorite types of episodes in a review on Apple Podcasts. We would really appreciate it, and we work really hard to give you the best content that will help your business grow. So, on to the episode with Sue. Let's get started. Welcome to the Product Boss podcast, where we help product-based businesses grow their sales and improve their strategies.
Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to my co-host and biz bestie, Mina Kunlo-Sitep, an Amazon guru that has built a multi-six-figure product-based business.
And introducing the other half of the Product Boss, Jacqueline Snyder. She has helped launch and grow over 500 fashion apparel and accessory brands, even one of her own.
And together, we share our inventory of secret weapons that will help you dig deep and do the work it takes.
Are you ready? Let's build together.
Welcome to the podcast, Sue.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited that you are here. So we've had a chance to meet Sue in person too. We're so excited when we get to have guests on the podcast that we've been able to work with and be with in person. And so it's just great. And we're so honored that you're here to share all of your knowledge with our listeners.
Well, it's really going to be fun because our audiences are compatible, right? I mean, your specialty is a little bit different than my specialty, but they merge together. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
So tell us a little bit about you and your businesses, because you have two businesses and a podcast.
Yeah, a little crazy, like probably all of us here. I'll just kind of cut to where we are now. So I have a company called the Ribbon Print Company. We sell custom ribbon printing systems to gift shops, chocolate owners, event planners, schools, like all different types of things. And some of my discovery with interacting with that audience actually led me to start the Gift Biz brand. What I was finding is so many people who are creators. I work with people who are physically making their own product versus having a factory making and producing in bulk. That may be a step that my audience goes to later, but they start with their own product and then, we go on from there. But what I found through trade shows at the Ribbon Print Company is so many people in this area don't know how to start a business. And so, and other issues that come along, the mindset of, well, what if I do it wrong from the start, all that type of thing. That led me to feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to help these people because they have gorgeous things that we all want. And they need to be selling them to us because we want them. So that's what led me to doing the Gift Biz Unwrapped podcast. And it wasn't until about 2 years into the podcast that I started creating programs and all of that. That's how that's developed. So that's still young. That's only about 1.5 years old. The Ribbon Print Company has been up and running for about 10 years now. That's kind of a quick synopsis, if you will.
And so do you typically work with startups, the startup makers, or what stage in the business are you usually finding them in?
Really 50-50. I mean, a lot of people have been making for a long time, but never really selling, and now all of a sudden they're thinking about doing that. But then I also have a lot of people, and this is what I wrote a book on last year, a lot of people who have started and they get stuck. Like it's not working the way they thought it would. They're not making the money, or they're not attracting customers, or they're getting discouraged because they're throwing a lot of money at a business that's not returning. And so that's when I wrote my book. It's called Maker to Master, Find and Fix What's Not Working in Your Small Business. And lots of times what I'm finding, it's the basic stuff to starting a business that was never put in place. Because a lot of times when people start a business, the first thing they do is, oh my gosh, what am I going to name it? Like they jump way ahead of the process to the fun stuff before getting some of the basic elements in place.
What are you finding that their biggest mindset issue is when they're in that stage?
I think there's two things. The first one is they're afraid to make a mistake and then have that out for public viewing that they didn't do it right. One of the things that is so crazy to me is that there's a maker who makes something and let's say it's candles or scarves or you name it. And it's usually their friends or family who say, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. You could be making money selling this. Why don't you start a company? And then when they do, they don't tell those same people that they're in business because they don't want to fail. They're afraid of, it's all self-doubt, right? When really the very first people who will support you in your business are your friends and family. I mean, that only lasts for a short amount of time, but you ought to be telling them, what you're doing. So I find that that's a big thing, is that people are just not getting the word out because of the mindset, because they're afraid to fail. And the other thing is really like what we started talking about in the beginning, is not laying those very important things right in the beginning. And a lot of them are really easy. They're not hard to do. You just need to do it. Like have a separate bank account for your business, so know where the money is coming in and out, that, like, just basic things like that, registering your business properly, that type of thing.
Wouldn't you say, though, oftentimes makers don't find themselves business people? I'm saying that in air quotes. So, because my mom is actually a maker. I think we've talked about this personally, but she's always like, I know how to be creative, but she doesn't know how to necessarily flip it into a business. So she can sell to her friends, or she sells to people. But then I think mindset wise too, people don't always feel like, I feel like people default to saying like, oh, I needed a business degree, or I'm just not but you are an entrepreneur. You just need to know maybe the steps to set it up. I mean, what would you say to that?
I agree with you 100%. But and that goes into the point where people are thinking, well, I'm going to fail. I don't know. So some of it is mindset too, because really a lot of these steps are not that hard to take. You just need to know what steps to take.
Mm-hmm. And selling to your friends, like I think if they know to come to you for something. So for example, my mother sells baby blankets. She tries to make all sorts of blankets, but constantly people are having babies, and her friends and family, they come back to her because every single person is like, when there's a baby born, we're going to go to Lydia and Lydia is going to make us that blanket. So I think when you're really specific, and at least friends and family, because as they start to buy more and gift it to people, then those people will now know about you. So it's that sort of like organic chain reaction of how things used to be sold. Like it doesn't always have to be global or on the internet and that sort of thing, right?
No, I agree with you there. And I think that's a really good starting place for people, because they can check their systems, like to do it really as a professional business, but to friends and family. So you start building up your sales, you start learning how to ship a product if you're going to be sending it away versus, just hand delivering it somewhere to your friend or whatever. Checking your checkout processes if you have a shop online, just making sure that everything's stable. But friends and family only takes you so far. And that's also where I think people get stuck, is they're like, well, okay, I'm selling to friends and family and that's all good, but like, where's everyone else? Why aren't they coming to me? Because they're not thinking of the extension of what they need to start doing next.
Yeah. And I think there's a different approach too. When you're selling to your friends and family, you almost, it is a lot of the handing it out and one-on-one interaction. You can only practice on them so much. They don't really come to you with the real problems of, hey, I didn't like how you packaged this, or, hey, I didn't like how long it took you to fulfill this order for me, or any of those things. So I think that it's hard to really get enough. The rest you have to kind of fill in the gaps of, best practices for a real business versus a hobby.
Right. And I think there's another thing with friends and family, and I push back with my clients all the time on this, is pricing. They want to give their friends and family a deal. And okay, where that may come into play, family discounts, all that, where that may come into play sometimes, if that's what you're doing, and then you just extend that pricing on as you move forward. I see so many people who aren't even covering costs. They're selling, so they think they have a business going, but they're actually still losing money.
So when you work with the makers, because you work with gifters, bakers, crafters, and makers, right?
Yay, love it. You got it exactly right.
Thanks. No, and so when you work with them, how do you help them price their hours? So you're still working with people that are in their business, and we do have people that are still making their product, whether they're making soap or oils or whatever they're making. How do you help them account for the cost, like the cost of goods and materials, plus their own personal labor to cost it correctly to sell it, whether they're selling direct to customer, or I guess you're probably not working wholesale, but let's say direct to
Well, some
customer.
are.
Some are. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
because that's, as people get established, that would be the next step, depending if they want to do the volume play, right? Not everybody does, by the way. And some people, I say sometimes you grow yourself out of your passion, because some people, it all starts with, what are you trying to do in the first place? Are you looking for a side income that's going to support a family trip or something like that? Versus you want this to sustain you or replace your 9 to 5, whatever. But back to your question about pricing, the first thing is, what are the raw costs, of the product that you're making, which includes the container, all of that. But then there's some other side costs that I think people forget about. Like, let's talk about the shipping costs that it took for you to get the product, or if you had to drive somewhere and get it, those are all costs too. And what about packaging? So it's not just making it, but what are you packaging it in? All of that. So all of those little side things have to be considered. And then time. And time is a big one, because so many people in the makers business think, well, that I'm not going to charge for because it's not worth, like, that's not part of it. Yes, I get margin, but I shouldn't also be putting in my time. And yeah, you need to, because if you ever want to grow, you've got to know what your time is, because if you're going to bring in people to help. So then we start talking about, well, how many of X product can you make within a half an hour or an hour, and then break it all up from there. So time definitely has to be included, and also margin. It's the whole thing. I mean, clearly pricing varies by industry as well, of course. Pricing models for a consumable product like cupcakes is different than candles, but the ideas are the same. The components are the same.
Yeah, and when you don't have the right margin or the right profit in there, you're just being busy, and I think that's where people get mixed up with the busyness as versus profitable, because you feel like you're profitable because you're so busy. But if you don't have the right margin, you're just busy,
Right.
Well, I remember the one time I think it was my brother, he had like stepped into my business some years ago, and he's like, you could go get a part-time job working somewhere else and make more than you're making in your own business. Or like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm spending all the hours all night, all the things, like blood, sweat, tears, like lots of tears. And I could just go work for someone else and not take that home. And obviously there's that balance, but that was like that click in my head where I was like, well, I love doing what I do, but I do need to pay myself at least, a minimum wage. So, but oftentimes I tell my clients, and I don't know if you agree, but I like that if you value your time and you're like, I should get paid $50 an hour, that's great. But what I would rather them charge for their labor is if they were able to hire someone that could do that. So let's say it's someone who's making the soaps and pouring the soaps or whatever it is. How much would that labor cost? If that person's a $15 an hour or a $20 an hour person, then that's what you bill for your labor into your, like you said, obviously like how long it takes to do a batch, how many you can make per hour, you break that all down. But even though you value your time as like the CEO or the owner of your business, those hourly amounts are for other tasks that you're doing versus actual labor on your
Right. This ends up being a big topic within the group too, because you think that the more I sell, if you're a one-man show, the more you sell, the more work you've just made for yourself. And you're limited. There's only so much you can do within your business. So you're right. Then you have to consider bringing people on. And really what you should be doing is capturing more business. I mean, you are the CEO now, so you should be doing different types of tasks. Not necessarily right in the beginning. You have to make sure that your product sells, that you've got traction, et cetera. But then you want to be growing your business. So I absolutely agree with you. You look at labor in terms of what you would do to have somebody else making your product. But there's another thing there, which is the conscious release of actually making it. Because so many people started because they love making.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another point. It's kind of like a, come to Jesus type thing. Like, is that what you want to do? Do you really want to be the head business owner, or do you love making? I have a potter up in Wisconsin, and guess what? He loves making. He loves making. He loves talking to customers. He loves going to trade shows or craft shows, interacting with people, and that's all he wants to do. And so he's fine with, he's figured out how much he can make every month based on what he can actually tangibly make. And that's as big as he wants his business to be, period. That's it.
I mean, I totally respect that. I guess what I'm trying to say too is that he can't charge $75 an hour maybe for making a pot, right? It might not be able to, unless he's a major artist, it may not be able to translate into the making cost of it versus whatever his markup is from his cost to his retail. That's where him as the business owner will make that other money. So I think sometimes, like, I know some of the makers I've worked with, like, they just don't know how to cost their hourly making into the total cost of an item.
I agree. I wish I had that problem. I don't have people. I'm not having to push people down on their production costs. I'm having to push people up.
Okay.
to show the value in the making. Because the other thing about making is first off, you've invested in equipment. You've invested in a ton of hours to get whatever technique you're using to produce whatever the resulting product is. And so there's a lot in there, and you've learned how to use equipment, and you have a skill. So it's all of that. So I'm really more on I'm seeing more on the other end, having to prop people up and say, no, the making is worth a whole lot more than what you're saying. And sometimes they start with zero.
Do you have any tips as far as people who come to the maker market, let's say, and they have candles or they have cupcakes or they have things that are common to the marketplace? How would you recommend them to stand out in the crowd?
Okay, I'm so excited that we're talking about this topic. And I want to start with a story. This is a real, true story. I was up at a trade show. It was a consumer show, but it was Canada's Baking and Sweets. They have an America's Baking and Sweets. This was Canada's Baking and Sweets. It's about probably 6 or 7 years ago now. And they have classes on how to use the fondant and make all these fun classes. And we were there at the Ribbon Print Company booth, printing ribbon, teaching people how to incorporate, all that kind of thing. And at our booths, we print ribbon on site for people so they can see how easy it is to customize. And this girl comes up and we're just printing the ribbon and doing our normal thing. All of a sudden she breaks down in tears. Like, I'm not even kidding you, from 0 to 100 in a half a second. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I say? What did I do? Was it me? And I asked the other person who was working the booth with me, can you just take over? Let me go talk to her. Did she just see something on her phone that someone passed away? What's happening? And so we went over to a table and started talking. And her story was that she had come to this trade show with really high hopes. She wanted to start a cupcake company, and she wanted to eventually have this possibly replace a part-time job that she had. And she was devastated because she saw and kept running into so many people who already have cupcake companies. So she's like, this dream that I have is now shattered. I can't do it because everyone else is already doing it. Everyone else is already there. So we had a little conversation about that's true. There are a lot of people, but you're also in a very condensed area. You're at a baking show. So of course, those are going to be the people who are there, but there's always a place for you, whether you're a cupcake maker, a candle maker, any maker, there's always a place. The trick is to do something a little bit differently to make you stand out, to make you provide something to your potential customer, to make people talk about you in a little bit of a different way. And let me share some examples with you. Okay, so since we're in the consumable angle, It's a company called The Cookie Joint, and they do cookies, so similar to cupcakes, right?
Uh-huh.
They have a product called cookie fries. They're shaped like French fries. They're served in a bag, as if you think of it like a McDonald's small fries with ketchup, right?
Uh-huh.
They have cookie fries that are really like shortbread cookies with chocolate dip.
Oh, that's so cool.
But what they've done is they've separated themselves with not all their product line, but one product. They've separated themselves by shape, right? So
Mhm.
they have a cookie that's shaped like a French fry. Who would have ever thought? And it gives people a way to talk about their business. So even if they if they just want like regular chocolate chip cookies for a party, oh, go to the Cookie Joint. They're the company that does these really cool things called cookie fries. Oh, what are cookie fries? And then they talk about it a little bit. Like, so you're giving content to your customer to be able to talk and share and refer you. This is one way of standing out. Okay. And there are a number of different ways. Like, we don't have time to go through all of them, but shape is one example. Location's a great example too. I don't know if any of you guys who are in the Los Angeles area know the bar that's called Good Times by, what is it called? Good Times by Davy Wayne's. You enter into the bar through a refrigerator door. Like, literally you open a door as if it's a refrigerator, and that's how you get into the bar. So how cool in terms of another talking point, a way to stand out. You know, like half the people don't even, they're like, what's that bar where you go through the door, the refrigerator? And everyone's like, oh, Good Times with Davy Wayne's. Like, people know it already. Or people come home from vacation and say, we went to the coolest place. And it's not necessarily the coolest place because of what's inside the bar or the drinks they serve or whatever. It has to do with that door,
It's
right?
memorable. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are ways to stand out, right? So, okay, so location, colors, we all know Lily Pulitzer and Vera Bradley. Like, when you say those names, you can just automatically think of those brands, right? And I could go on and on. I don't know. I can give you another example if you want me to, but the point is making yourself stand out in some way that may have to do with your product or may not.
Yeah, even naming your products, like you'll see that with OPI nail polish that they really opened up in salons and they had really cool names. So any way that's creative or a twist on what you're already doing, it kind of adding your own little personality to your own brand.
What are some ways that you've seen some of your clients sort of like execute that and stand out? Like, what are some other interesting ways?
Well, I do want to get to one that everybody has. And that is what's big right now is showing yourself as a business owner, and going on live or going on Instagram stories or, whatever it is. You are a differentiator for your business no matter what. And because we're makers, the story about how you started your business or what you're doing in your business is a story, and it will attract the right people to your product too. So I always feel like that's an overlay on top of anything else that you would do, is showing yourself. Now, it's the easiest and also the hardest thing for people to do, right? Getting up and talking about your business or being face to camera, and showing who you are behind your business. The great thing about makers is there's so much content. You can show how you make your product. You can show yourself at a craft show. You can show interaction with customers. There's so much that you can do. In turn, then, you're getting your customer to be able to know you on a personal level, whether you're selling locally or now online, if you have an Etsy shop. And the more people bond to you, the more they're going to continue to support you. I have a wonderful example here. Sheena makes sugar scrubs. Like, so that whole pampering industry I'm really loving. She sells at craft shows. She has a following like crazy. She's not the most like clean streamed. Like, she gets online and she's just crazy. She doesn't have her makeup on. She's behind the scenes. Her place looks like a mess. She's so personable. Her audience adores her. She sells out of her product immediately, instantly, all the time. And she's not refined. She's just herself. And people adore her. Maybe not everyone would like her style, but people adore her for who she is.
I think whether it's you in front of the camera or just showing that your company is made of people, and these are the people that are making it, choosing it, packing it, letting you see the behind the scenes. I think that is just super interesting as well. So it's kind of that like voyeuristic reality show-esque way that people are like, "Ooh, what are they doing now?" And I think if it's not always like about your kids. So if you have kids and like your customer doesn't have kids, don't include your kids, but include things that they can relate to.
It's a great point. It's a great point. And I think a lot of people will shy away from that because they'll say, well, I don't want to share all my secrets. Like, I don't want to show people how, like, for some, maybe you don't want to show your sources potentially, right? But the truth is that most people aren't equipped, nor does anyone have time to start doing something like making candles on the side or something, unless it's not their thing already, you know? So I think it's kind of an easy out just to say, oh, I don't want to show anybody anything, you know, and then if you're adding yourself to it, and this is the other point of just showing yourself you or showing people you, is let's say someone made the exact same thing you make, you know, through the same factory or with the same materials or whatever it was, nobody can be you.
Right.
So no matter what, that's a differentiator right there.
The one thing I'm finding from the podcast is that you don't necessarily have to be the face. You can simply be the voice. So if you're showing your hands in the making, you're showing, you know, your creative process, just like how people get very obsessed with watching people plan out in their planners, literally writing in their planner, this is what they're doing. This is how many glasses of water I had today. You know, it's so interesting, right? Because it's like you live a little bit vicariously through them. And I do agree 100% that the reason why some people don't do it is because they're afraid of copycats, you know, people coming in, stealing their ideas. But at the same time, it's just like what you said, nobody is you. And then, you know, and there is always, they can't copy everything about you. They may be able to copy one product, you know, they can't copy everything that you're doing, you are, and what your personality is.
Nor can they be in your head and know what you're thinking about doing.
Right.
So if you're creating things, or, you know, and sometimes it's just the experience that you take your customer through. You know, what do you include in the boxes with the product that's being sent out? And I'm not talking about kickback coupons and things like that now, but I'm talking about, is there a special note that you put in there that changes regularly that someone couldn't copy, or something else that you're doing with your interaction with your customer through emails, or more in person when someone opens the box, or whatever it is. They're not going to be able to figure that out. And if they do, that's okay, because they're still behind you because you're doing something new.
We interview Melina Palmer. She's going to be on. I don't know if she's been on or before or after when this episode airs, but she even talks about just like touching and texture and stuff. And so I brought up like QVC and HSN. So even if you did video where your hand is touching the product, or you're just showing, I'm using my hand right now, but like you're showing a jar moving or to scale, whatever it is, what is it? The Muppet Babies, when it used to just be her legs, like her feet in it, the cartoon, where you're somewhat interacting, and like you said, your voice. I think we have a client, Yearly Co., who does such a good job of putting herself in it, because she's actually a maker. She makes anniversary gold bangles for every year of your anniversary. So she taught herself how to be a jeweler. She still makes it. She does outsource, I think, some of it. And then but she's a part of it. So for her, like she shows you her life as her brand, not her kids so much. It's more about her as like a female business owner, her making it, and like her beautiful surroundings kind of thing. So you could be as far that way, or you can look at other companies. I would tell people to look at really big brands and how not really big, but like I've talked about this all the time, but Uncommon James, on Instagram, and it's still owned by a single person, but you can see sort of how they make it a little bit about the person who owns it and very much about the product they're selling.
Right.
You know?
People are interested. It's shocking. And I think, you know, as your business grows, if you're not the one who likes to be the face all the time, you can have employees do it too. I've seen that be very successful too. Go in and engage and interact, whether it's DMs or I like polling, I like teasing, I like, you know, like teasing to the example of, wait until you see what's coming up tomorrow. Like just goofy stuff like that. And my audience seems to resonate with that. But I'll have them interact with me too. You know, if you think you know what it is, DM me. First person who gets it, you know, like things like that. But
Yeah. And it's fun
playful.
too.
You know, and we ask clients all the time, like, how many more customers do they want, you know, and that idea of the 1,000 true fans, right? So if you get 1,000 people like fully committed and interacting with your product, is that enough? Well, if you can keep selling to them and they feel like they're part of it, that's sort of like that initial, if you can get to that, then it gets easier, right? Then it might actually organically take off on its own, like past what you can do. So I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with video per se, but even if it was like once a week you went in and you did your own QVC HSN show where you know, are just sort of up in front and they're getting to see you, but then the rest of it is sort of like, again, that behind the scenes idea. But yeah, I mean, I think you're standing the idea of how to stand out. And I think you say it like not just be another cupcake or another candle. It's something that people should really push themselves towards, like really figure out like how they can be different. And we had seen it in those candles. Remember those candles we found that were like adulting? There was like an adulting scent. And so it was like, and I remember it. So adulting smells like waking up early and having to go to a job. I don't know. It was something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
it was like
it's really
a candle
creative.
name and it was really creative. So it wasn't just another like jasmine scented something. It was a cool label that made you think about it.
It's really important. It's really important. I call it unique special power. And when you can find, and your unique special power can either stay the same or it can change over time. You yourself are one of your unique special powers, right? But it's really great to identify and put something like that within your brand of whatever your product is, because you're providing a way for someone to talk about you. You know, just like what you're saying now. And if you don't, let's face it, 1,000 true fans, right? You're never going to retain those 1,000 all the time. There's going to be some who come in and some that go away. So if you can naturally help people learn to talk about you and spread the word by providing them the content that they need to do so, that's going to help you stay at that 1,000.
I love that so much. Unique selling power. It's so much easier to think about when you phrase it like that. Special power, special sauce, all that stuff. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Jacqueline, should we wrap up and with our fun secret power questions? No, they're just really simple questions.
Oh, I forgot about this.
It's fun. And then, you know, I asked the question about like alter ego or stage persona. I think that sometimes like if you give yourself that like your special power, like I used to call myself a dragon slayer to get myself going, you know? And so I think when you start to identify that, like your special power, and then also just whatever you need as like the persona, if you don't feel comfortable being the face of your brand, put on that mask, put on your Beyonce, like Sasha Fierce and go and get it, because that's what you're going to do. You're going to bring your
I love
USP
that.
to them.
That's awesome. That's great.
So, okay. So let's jump into these questions.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. It's fun. It's fun. At least I think they are. So what is your coffee order?
My coffee order lately is a cold foam, cold brew.
What is the favorite thing on your desk?
The favorite thing on my desk is a rock that has my focus word for the year. And my focus word for the year is visibility. And it just makes me stay grounded.
Mm-hmm. It's on my desk too. And you're on our podcast, so you are hitting your word. So finish this sentence. When I pick up my phone, I
look at my messages, because that's where my family is always talking to me. And my kids now, I'm an empty nester. My kids are out of the house. I'm traveling a lot. My husband travels a lot. So that's the first place I go.
Facebook messages, is that?
No, just the regular
text messages. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You should get your kids on Voxer.
Mm-hmm.
You should get your kids on Voxer.
Dangerous. You should see some of these threads. They're pretty fun. I think.
All right. So you wish you knew how to.
I wish I knew how to meditate. I really need to get going with that. So, and I'm working on it, but I'm trying to meditate, but I don't know how, and I certainly don't do it well.
Sounds like you're overthinking meditating.
But Headspace, I think they have a free trial. I'm on my second year of doing it, and there's like one-offs. And Andy is the voice in my head that makes me calm. So that's just my promotion there.
All right, I'm trying, but I might be trying too hard. So
okay.
True.
Yeah. All right. So what was the last show you binge watched?
The last show I binge watched was the whole season of Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, holy moly.
I still have somewhere at the end. All right. What should the title on your business card actually say?
Workaholic, and I own it.
Do you have an alter ego or a stage persona?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. This was really, I've heard you talking about these questions and I wanted to give some more thought to it. The first thing that came to mind for me was Martha Stewart, because whenever I have friends over, and I have my girlfriends over every Friday night, my girlfriends and I all get together, and it's either at someone's house or we're going out or whatever. And I love like making a party for us all, or gardening or like whatever. So I'm kind of an inner Martha Stewart, but I never have time for it.
So last question, Sue. What advice would you give baby Sue as an entrepreneur now that you're grown up Sue as an entrepreneur?
Well, I am still giving this to myself, still to this day, but I wish I would have started this a long time ago. And that is trust yourself and just chill out.
I love that.
Actions, analyze, don't stress about it, just chill out.
Yes. Such great advice.
Awesome. So Sue, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
They can come over to giftbizunwrapped.com. That's the source for all the maker stuff. And I would love for you guys to join me over on my podcast, also by the same name, Gift Biz Unwrapped.
Great. Thank you so much, Sue.
It has been so much fun. Thank you for having me on your show.
This episode is over, but it doesn't have to end. Head over to our Facebook group, search for the Product Boss Biz Community, or the link is also in the show notes. Come connect with other product bosses just like you. We'll see you in there.
If you love the Product Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, share, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time, Product Bosses, let's make it happen.